He was publicly humiliated, thrown out of the salon with a loud declaration. "People like you aren't welcome here." The young barber thought he was defending values, completely unaware that the client in the red MAGA hat was the new owner of the establishment. No one expected the calm smile of this man to turn into a triumph that would turn the entire salon upside down. But what happened next forever changed the rules of the game. Marcus James was the kind of man you couldn't rattle, especially not with something as trivial as other people's prejudices. At 42 years old, he embodied confidence. Tall, fit, with a warm smile that could thaw even the iciest conversation. But on this sunny afternoon downtown, he was about to face another challenge. The barbershop he stepped into exuded affluence. Stylish leather chairs, retro-lit mirrors, exposed brick walls adorned with contemporary posters. Everything about the place screamed sophistication, catering to clients with both money and taste. Smooth jazz flowed from the speakers, blending with the low hum of clients' chatter. The air carried the distinct scent of menthol and expensive hair oil. Marcus walked in confidently, dressed in his usual attire, a plain white t-shirt, worn jeans, and, most notably, a red MAGA hat perched atop his head, instantly drawing attention. At the front desk, his gaze met Ryan, a young barber in his late 20s. With a perfectly trimmed fade and a scissors tattoo on his neck, Ryan looked like the poster child for modern cool. His entire aura screamed style and self-assurance. Upon seeing Marcus, or more precisely his hat, Ryan froze for a moment, then raised an eyebrow with theatrical flair, tension hanging in the air. "Is this a joke?" Ryan asked loudly, dispensing with any pretense of politeness. Marcus stopped, unfazed by the tone, and calmly removed his hat, placing it on the counter. "Just here for a haircut," he replied evenly, his expression neutral. Ryan crossed his arms over his chest, leaning back against the counter. "I don't think we serve people like you," he said with a smile dripping with sarcasm and disdain. "We're all about inclusivity here, if you catch my drift." The barbershop fell silent. Conversations among the other clients ceased as everyone pretended not to watch the unfolding drama. Someone even pulled out their phone. Marcus studied Ryan, a subtle smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Interesting stance," he said with a nod, "especially considering the irony of what's happening right now." A soft chuckle came from somewhere in the back of the room. Ryan clearly hadn't anticipated that response. "This isn't discrimination," Ryan snapped, nervously fiddling with a towel in his hands. "This is about protecting our values." Marcus shrugged, showing no sign of irritation. "Isn't respecting every customer part of those values?" Ryan opened his mouth to reply, but another voice cut through the tension. "Ryan, what's going on here?" It was Sarah, the shop manager, a composed and professional woman in her mid-30s. She approached with an air of authority, clearly unsettled by the spectacle her employee was making. Clients whispered among themselves, eagerly awaiting the resolution. Marcus remained composed, his arms folded, exuding quiet confidence. As one client tucked away his phone, he muttered to himself, "This is about to get interesting." The barbershop braced itself for the next act, with Marcus clearly intent on getting his hair cut, but not in the way anyone had anticipated. Ryan, puffing up his chest, took a step closer to the counter, relishing his self-assigned role as a defender of the right values. "Look, it's a free country," he said with a mocking tone. "But with that hat, you'd be better off finding another barbershop. That doesn't fly here." Marcus narrowed his eyes slightly, but stayed calm. The tension in the shop grew thicker. Conversations had stopped completely, and all eyes were on the unfolding drama. A man in the corner discreetly started recording on his phone, sensing the situation might escalate. Marcus slowly reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone with deliberate ease, as though the exaggerated slowness was part of his strategy. "Ryan, right?" he asked, his voice calm and measured. "You don't mind if I confirm your shop's policy with the owner, do you?" Ryan scoffed, his confidence only growing. "Oh, go right ahead," he said loudly, ensuring everyone in the room could hear him. "Think a phone call will change anything? Good luck." Marcus maintained his composure, dialing a number as his steady gaze remained locked on Ryan. Before he could say a word, another voice broke the silence. "Ryan, what's going on here?" It was Sarah again, her tone now sharper and more authoritative. She approached quickly, her tailored black suit and composed demeanor commanding attention. "This guy decided to make a political statement," Ryan said, gesturing at Marcus's hat like it was a live grenade. "And we're not about that." Sarah glanced at Marcus, then at Ryan, her expression shifting from confusion to mild exasperation. "Maybe we can handle this a bit more calmly?" she suggested, her voice an attempt at de-escalation. But Ryan wasn't having it. "I already handled it," he said firmly, crossing his arms again. "This guy can either leave or ditch the hat." By now, Marcus had finished his call, though he kept his phone in hand. He looked at Sarah and then at Ryan. "Are you all serious right now?" he asked, a trace of amusement creeping into his tone. "We live in an era of inclusivity, and you're out here proving it only works one way." Ryan interrupted him with a dismissive wave. "Save us the lecture," he said, his irritation mounting. "Symbols like that only cause trouble. We don't want any problems here." A faint laugh came from one of the clients, and a quiet voice muttered, "This is getting ridiculous." Marcus raised a hand, signaling he wasn't looking for a fight. He turned to Sarah, his voice calm but firm. "Do you really want your business associated with this kind of customer service?" Sarah looked visibly uneasy, shooting a reproachful glance at Ryan, who stood his ground like a monument to stubbornness. "I apologize for this," she began, her tone carefully measured. "But maybe we can—" Ryan cut her off. "No, Sarah, this is about principles. If we give in to one person, where does it end?" Marcus nodded slightly, as if conceding a point, then held up his phone again. This time he tapped the screen a few times before showing it to Ryan. "Would you like to speak to the owner yourself?" Marcus asked, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "I think he'd love to hear how you're defending his values." A collective gasp rippled through the shop. The clients were clearly enjoying the drama, some openly recording now. Ryan's bravado faltered ever so slightly. Sarah's eyes narrowed, her expression turning thoughtful, as though pieces of a puzzle were clicking into place. "Excuse me, sir," she began cautiously, her tone now tinged with curiosity. "Would you mind reminding me who you are?" Marcus smiled, his gaze fixed squarely on Ryan. "Don't worry," he said smoothly. "You'll find out soon enough." The barbershop seemed to hold its breath, the tension thick enough to cut with scissors. One thing was clear. The real story was just beginning. Marcus calmly ended his call, slid the phone back into his pocket, and looked directly at Sarah. His gaze was firm, but not confrontational. "Manager? Perfect," he said with a slight smile. "Allow me to introduce myself. Marcus James, your new owner." For a moment, it felt as though someone had muted the barber shop. Sarah froze, her face draining of color as though someone had poured all the life out of her. Ryan stood still, mouth agape, struggling to process what he had just heard. "What?" Ryan stammered, gripping the counter as if the floor were falling out from under him. "Is this some kind of joke?" "Not at all," Marcus replied coolly, pulling a set of documents from the inside pocket of his blazer. He placed them neatly on the counter like a seasoned poker player laying down a winning hand. "Here," he said, tapping the first page, "are the purchase papers. And here," he indicated another, "is my signature." The previously hushed crowd erupted in murmurs. Some clients whispered to each other, while others whistled in amazement. "I recently acquired this barber shop," Marcus continued, turning to Ryan, "and a few others in the chain. I thought I'd stop by, see how things were running. As you can see, the show has been unforgettable." His tone remained calm, but every word cut through the tension like a blade. Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but only managed a few incoherent sounds. His fists clenched and unclenched, and his eyes darted to the papers as if willing them to disappear. "This can't be real," he muttered under his breath, his voice barely audible to the nearest clients. Sarah, recovering from her initial shock, tried to salvage the situation. "Mr. James," she began, her voice shaky with nerves. I had no idea the salon had been sold. Clearly, Marcus replied, casually returning the papers to his pocket. And honestly, Sarah, that makes this even more interesting. He turned his attention back to Ryan, who now stood frozen, like a statue weathering a storm. Ryan, isn't it? Marcus asked, narrowing his eyes slightly. I appreciate employees with strong principles, but it seems your principles are a bit selective, considering they allow you to turn away customers because of their clothing. The crowd stirred again. Someone chuckled quietly, and a voice from the back remarked, "Now this is getting good." Ryan forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. I was just trying to protect the salon's reputation," he stammered, avoiding Marcus's piercing gaze. Reputation? Marcus echoed, raising an eyebrow with mock curiosity. Interesting approach. Typically, a reputation is built on respecting customers, not humiliating them. Sarah tried to intervene, her voice tinged with desperation. Mr. James, I assure you, this is just a misunderstanding. Ryan is usually an excellent employee. He must have just what? Marcus interrupted, locking eyes with her. Overstepped his authority? Put his personal biases ahead of the business? Ryan started to respond, but Marcus raised a hand, silencing him. Let's do this, Marcus said, leaning slightly forward. I'll give you the chance to prove you know how to fix mistakes. Ryan nodded so quickly it seemed like he might injure his neck. Yes, of course, sir. Excellent, Marcus said, straightening up. We'll start with an apology to every customer here who had to witness this circus. The clients, who had been hanging on every word, broke into quiet applause and murmurs of approval. Ryan looked as though he wanted the ground to swallow him, but he nodded again. The final note came as Marcus delivered a parting line. And now let's carry on with the day, like professionals. But remember, Ryan, Marcus paused for effect, I'm always watching my shops. The applause grew louder, and Ryan visibly paled. Clients began returning to their conversations, though the buzz of excitement lingered in the air. Marcus, still composed, walked to an open chair and sat down, ready at last for his haircut. I think we can get to the haircut now, he said with a sly smile. Drama-free this time. The irony of his tone wasn't lost on anyone, leaving the room buzzing with an energy no one would forget anytime soon. Marcus rose from the barber's chair, casually adjusting his blazer sleeves. His gaze landed on Sarah, who stood nearby with a visibly anxious expression. Her eyes held a mix of apology and hope that the day's ordeal would soon come to an end. Sarah, Marcus began, his voice calm yet firm. I trust you understand that this kind of behavior is unacceptable. Customers should feel welcome, regardless of their views, attire, or politics. She nodded so quickly, her dark hair spilled over her shoulders. Of course, Mr. James. I promise this won't happen again. I'll personally make sure of it. Marcus turned his attention to Ryan, who lingered by the counter, looking as though he wished he could disappear. Ryan, Marcus said, his tone sharpening slightly. You're lucky I value people's ability to learn and grow. So, I'm giving you a chance, a full course on customer service training. He let the weight of his words hang in the air before continuing. Complete it successfully, and you can stay. If not, you're out. Ryan swallowed hard, his face flushing red. He nodded slowly, unable to meet Marcus's gaze. I understand, sir. I'll do better. The crowd, which had been quietly observing, broke into applause. An older man in glasses added loudly, That's what he needed. Ryan shrank further into himself, clearly feeling the weight of the public rebuke. Marcus, satisfied, picked up his red MAGA hat and placed it back on his head. His smile was confident, but not cruel, a subtle declaration of his victory. I hope next time I can just get a haircut without the theatrics, Marcus said, glancing at Sarah, though his gaze briefly flickered to Ryan. A few clients chuckled, and one called out, Bet they'll roll out the red carpet for you next time. Marcus made his way to the door, adjusting his hat as the clients stepped aside. Phones captured his every move, as the story of the new owner who put the barber in his place was sure to dominate social media by nightfall. Before stepping outside, Marcus turned one last time, locking eyes with Ryan. "Remember this, Ryan," he said, his tone light but serious. "Your success depends on the choices you make. Today, you got to see how quickly things can change. Use it wisely." With that, he walked out into the sunshine, leaving behind a barbershop now simmering with equal parts shock and admiration. Inside, a client said what everyone was thinking. "That's what a real boss looks like.